So, 32nd Independence Day of Eritrea. Just let me say this. Personally, I find this, especially as a Pan-Africanist and also from Ethiopia, I find it very, I never thought it in this way, very symbolic for Eritrea, that having an Independence Day on the 24th of May, which is just the eve of the African Liberation Day. And speaking of today, I mean, the African Liberation Day was, it was 60 years ago, the Organization of African Unity was established, but maybe the Europeans have gone from the continent physically, but that colonization after neo-colonization still exists in the continent, and it's very much a hot topic in the continent. So having Eritrea, for which we all know Eritrea as that country who has really the gut to say no for anything that, if it doesn't believe in it, in the face of the so-called international organization, to the Western countries and particularly to the US, while other African countries don't have somehow that capacity to say it. So this is really a symbolic one. But also, it's not just that for free the country has got that freedom. It's more than 2 decades or almost 3 decades years of resilience because of the challenges it has, the sanctions that has been put up on the country by the Western countries and the so-called international organizations. Let me start by asking the first question to our guest, Ato Girmays Haile. What factors do you think have contributed to the remarkable resilience of the Eritrean people over the past 3 decades, and how has it shaped, the collective strengths of Eritreans? Before you answer that, I did not do the introduction. Please introduce yourself, and you can go ahead and answer the question.
Thank you very much, Mahlet. Well, by way of introduction, I think you have done enough. It's the snippets that speak more than the details. But basically, I'm a veteran of the Eritrean independence struggle. And I also worked with the Eritrean government right after independence. And then from there, I moved on to work for the United Nations for about 22, 23 years. And I took an early retirement, and I'm now doing my research and studies around Pan-Africanism, and as well as the Horn of Africa region in particular, and the Southern Africa region additionally. And this has been my preoccupation, especially in the last 4 years, trying to understand what we understand of ourselves as Eritreans, and also what we understand of ourselves vis-a-vis the African struggle, and especially the Horn of Africa in particular. Your question is a very interesting question, probably one question that has, to my knowledge, never been asked until today. And what is the secret? The Eritrean struggle from its initial days, which is about 80 years now, 70, 80 years, with the colonial occupation of Italy, and the spontaneous indigenous movements for rights and independence, and also the power factors that were at that time around that area in terms of allegiances. Whenever there is an attempt to make allegiances with various forces from within the southern border of Eritrea, then there are also other interests that come in the way and kind of deprived the Eritreans of a cohesive, coordinated, and supported movement to wage for independence. So early on, Eritrean leadership understood that if there is going to be any kind of formal or informal struggle for independence, the core issue is that we have to depend on ourselves. Nobody will deliver this for us except ourselves. So this is the genesis of the Eritrean journey towards independence. And in that independence also, what mattered in terms of focus was who is our real enemy? Who are we fighting against, or who are we fighting to get this independence from? That was a critical question, and which, to my knowledge, until this day, especially Ethiopians have not really understood that question. They talk about separation, secession, Tegenetelech, and so on, but that's not what it was. For Eritreans, this was a right to self-determination because it was a colony of Italy, and so therefore other colonies of other colonial powers around Africa were also gaining their independence. And there was also this treaty that was signed between Emperor Menelik and the Italians about the existence and formal recognition of Eritrea as a non-Ethiopian territory. And it was towards the end when the Americans and the British started to meddle in this, as they were the victors of the Second World War, in terms of determining the fate of the various colonies that were there in the continent, tossed away and tossed about the Eritrean issue based on their interest. And that's where it had begun. So for the Eritreans and the Eritrean movement, we were not fighting anybody but the US policy that made our day difficult. Yes, on ground, it was the Ethiopian forces that were in Eritrea fighting the war, but we had always considered this as a proxy agent, but not necessarily as a prime enemy. So therefore, Eritreans believed from early on that there is no issue that will take us to war at any one point in time with Ethiopia, but rather that whoever is working on behalf of the United States that has basically messed up the entire future of Eritrea. And so therefore, that's where the focus stood. So with that focus, it was very important for the leadership to start to understand what mechanisms to put in place. So I think what came out of all this is we will do this on our own. There is nobody to help us. There is nobody to win this battle and war and of independence for us, but ourselves. So the emphasis on cohesion has been engendered in this whole movement from a very, very long time. So the secret, I think, and what has brought the Eritreans not only to that point of independence, but what seems to be propelling them going forward up to this point, is the cohesiveness of Eritreans, cohesiveness between leadership and the population, cohesiveness of the various ethnic groups amongst themselves, cohesion of the genders that were very important, and cohesion and peaceful coexistence of the religious establishments. And also that what I always call that cohesion between the various generations of Eritreans, one taking the baton after the other. And so therefore, building on what they have received to go forward. So this is what I think has been at the core of the Eritrean struggle, and now the Eritrean mentality as well.
Thank you very much, Ato Girmays. Although you refuse to introduce yourself, okay, I take it that as a humble approach, okay. But yeah, really, what for me the highlight is that the cohesiveness between the people and the government. Which still, there are different religions in the country, different ethnic groups, but to have that as a unified nation, that is something by itself that needs an explanation. That's by itself a topic to discuss, because many African countries having that different, even in one religion where there is, most of the people have the same religion, but different ethnic groups failed really to unify the people. Very interesting, really. I will bring our Dr. Biniam now really to answer the same question. In your view, really, what is the secret for Eritrea for such resilience, for that has long lasted for more than 3 decades, and it seems even on a very strong position to go for more, a very determined people and government. What is the secret behind this, Dr. Binia?